I'm Celina and I'm a Holocaust survivor. And every survival is unique, and every survival has a story. My story starts with my being liberated by the Russian army on May 9th, 1945, at Schindler's factory, munitions factory in Czechoslovakia. My parents both were accountants, and they worked at the Madrid sewing factory. We lived in the ghetto. They used to go out to the work and leaving me behind. But there were lots of selections of older people and younger people. And my parents were very afraid that one day they would come back from work and not find me in the ghetto. So I don't know how they did it, but I know that they bribed somebody to change my date of birth. It allowed me to get the blue card or Blauschein and allowed me to join them at the factory. My father ran the factory for Mr. Badrich. My mother was the accountant, and I ended up working on a sewing machine. Madrich and Oskar Schindler were very good friends. Oskar Schindler got the permission to start a munitions factory in Czechoslovakia and got the permission from Mr. Gutt to take 1,100 people to staff his munitions factory. And because it was going to be making items for the war, Mr. Schindler asked Mr. Madrich if he would like to join him in Czechoslovakia. But this was almost the end of war, and Mr. Madrich decided he's had enough and he was going to go back to Vienna. At that point, Mr. Schindler said to him, well, then put some of your people on my list. And that is how we got on the list. The 800 men were put in boxcars and sent on to the factory, to the munitions factory. Of course, we had no idea whether they left, whether they got there, or there was no communication. 2 weeks later, the 300 women were put in a boxcar, and we started. It took a day and part of the night. When the train stopped, we were sure we were already in Czechoslovakia. When the doors opened and we realized, with the noise and the dogs barking and the plumes of fire in the sky and this horrible smell, we realized we were in Auschwitz. We had no idea why. So we went through all the processes, like stripping naked, haircut, put into new kind of clothing, wooden shoes, into a barrack. The daily routines were such as standing on what we call the Appellplatz, where they counted us morning, noon, at night. Kitchen detail for peeling potatoes. And it was on one of those days that my mother volunteered with 30 other women to go and peel potatoes. She thought maybe she could pick up a few peels and bring them so we would have a little more to eat. Well, it just so happened that on that particular day, our barrack was taken for selection. So that was my chance to meet Dr. Mengele. He stood there, had a pencil in his hand, and the pencil tipped one way or the other. One way meant death, one way meant life. The first time I went through him, the pencil tipped death. But then something happened, and he asked the whole group that he had put on the side to walk through again. And it was at that point that I don't know why or how. I was 13 years old. Maybe it was a survival instinct, but I said to him 3 German words, "Lassen Sie mich," and he let me go. So I picked up my clothes, ran outside in the snow, naked, started to get dressed. And it was at that point that I saw my mother running towards the group of people that were standing there, because she had just heard that the barrack went for selection. So I can just imagine how frightened she was, We were still in Auschwitz for altogether about 5 weeks. The 300 women were not tattooed, and we were always wondering, are they going to tattoo us? And we were being led to a barrack where they were going to put the numbers on us. And all of a sudden, they told us to veer to another side and continue walking. And sure enough, as we walked, there were the boxcars. They put us in the boxcars because Schindler had come with money to bribe and get his women out. So it took us about 2 days to travel to Czechoslovakia. And when we finally got there and the doors opened up, we saw the men behind the barbed wire, so we knew that they had made it. And they, of course, did not recognize us because our shorn heads, we just didn't look the same way. But it was a very happy reunion. Mr. Schindler was very good. He created the barracks on top of the munitions factory, so it was nice and warm. He told us right away from the very beginning that the calibrators were going to be fixed in such a way that the German soldiers standing behind us would think that everything was okay, but actually we're like a millimeter off. And his wife, Emily, she was incredible. And I owe practically my life to her too, because of malnutrition and because at one point in the other camp, I had typhoid, scarlet fever, typhoid, and then jaundice after that. And she would come in every morning at 10 o'clock with a pot of farina that she had cooked herself and fill our bowls. So that was the only nutrition that we got. I often say that Oskar Schindler gave me a life, but Steven Spielberg gave me my voice. I lived in a community on Long Island. We lived there for 40 years. The community had no idea that I was a Holocaust survivor or anything like that. They knew I was a foreign-born, that I was DP, displaced person, and that I couldn't go back to my country, not that I wanted to go back to my country. And actually, the word Holocaust did not come in everyday parlance till about 1967. So I never spoke, not even my children knew of my experiences. And it wasn't really till 1993, when the movie finally came out, that I started talking about it. And my parents, who lived in Iowa, started talking about it, because it was a point of reference. It was after 2003 that I really became active in doing talks to colleges, schools, synagogues. I was able to connect with the young people who used to come up on stage and would talk to me about their own problems. And I was able to chat with them and help them. But also I had a very rewarding teaching career. I taught for 27 years, and I taught children who had difficulty learning because I could certainly identify with them, you know. And I was really reliving my own childhood through them.
Don't hate. Try to live with your neighbor. Accept people for what they are. Everybody has something to offer. Nobody's better than anybody else. I mean, those are my feelings, you know. Try to see the good in people.